All right, call into session.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. With that, I'll make a motion to approve the February 12th regular meeting minutes.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Follow that up with the motion to approve the February 12th non-public meeting minutes.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. A couple of announcements. The Select Board will meet on the following dates at 5 p.m. Monday, March 11th, Monday, March 25th. Town elections will be Tuesday, March 12th from 8 a.m. to 7 p.m., located at Plymouth Elementary School. Town meeting will follow on Wednesday, March 13th at 7 p.m., also at Plymouth Elementary School. Any citizens wishing to be listed on the Select Board's agenda should notify Town Hall before noon the Thursday before the scheduled meeting. All meetings are held upstairs in Town Hall and by Zoom, and the Zoom information can be found on the town's website at plymouthnh.gov. So with that, let's get into the town manager's report.
Sure. Thank you, Zach. Facility Services Manager Jesse Jennings has returned to employment with the town of Plymouth in the position of Facility Services Manager after his military deployment. Jesse started on Tuesday, February 13, and is located in the Emergency Management Office on the second floor of Town Hall. Jesse will join our department head team and will be attending our meetings. Jesse will be responsible for all aspects of facility services, including interior, exterior maintenance as needed, repairs and renovations, and outside groundskeeping. This is a position that has been long overdue, as our town buildings have been lacking the proper care and maintenance over the years. Jesse has started meeting with departments to view and understand the needs in each facility. Part-time assistant to the planner. I'm happy to report that we have been working with Plymouth State University on finding an intern assistant to the planner. Avery Opland, who is currently a Plymouth State University student, class of 2025, studying political science and global health with an interest in planning and development, has accepted the position as an intern part-paid employee. Avery will be starting actually on Monday, March 4th. Pease Public Library Director. The Pease Public Library trustees have appointed Becky White as the new Pease Public Library Director, effective last Monday, February 19th. Becky has been with the Pease Public Library for 6 years and recently was serving as Assistant Director and Archivist. HVAC update, I think we can take that up, Zach, if you want, when we do the purchase order for that,
Okay.
as we move through. Recycling Center glass removal update. The glass removal started on Wednesday, February 14th. During the first 5 days, over 600 tons of contaminated glass was removed and hauled to a Scarborough site. As of end of business last Friday, 698 total tons have been removed, and they've finished the project with a small amount of glass left that we will dispose of through demolition.
Did we go to our 90,000 budget?
It came in just right around there.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
The HOP Committee and Planning Board, at the Planning Board meeting on Thursday, there will be a Planning Board meeting on Thursday, March 7th at 6:30 p.m. The Planning Board will hold an informational meeting to discuss zoning amendments that will appear on the town meeting ballot. The informational meeting will take place at Plymouth Town Hall. Virtual attendance via Zoom is also possible. The meeting will be advertised in the newsletter, town website, social media, and we'll have a sandwich board on Main Street leading up to the meeting and be in place this Friday. Assessing and reevaluation contracts. Ann, Carol, and I met with Whitney Consultants on Wednesday, January 31st to discuss the upcoming contract renewal and the thoughts of conducting a reevaluation every 2 years. The other item that was discussed is the current Patriot assessing software that is being used. We asked Whitney Consultants for some additional information and input on other assessing software that may be a better fit for the town of Plymouth. We have a follow-up meeting with Whitney Consultants this Thursday, February 29th, to receive additional information. The Plymouth State University update, there's no additional updates with the exception of I will be sitting in on the interviews for the new Plymouth State University Police Chief tomorrow, February 27th. The downtown drainage, again, we have a kickoff meeting on March 6th that Josh will be attending on behalf of HEB for the town's engineer, as well as Plymouth Village Water and Sewer, and that pretty much concludes my report.
Fantastic.
Just a couple questions.
Sure.
So the university intern, are they just staying this semester or all through next year as well?
All through next year.
Okay, awesome. Let's see.
It's roughly going to be, I should have said, it's roughly going to be 6 to 10 hours a week.
Okay.
On Mondays and Wednesdays to assist Joseph with meeting minutes, as well as attending the meetings, as well as doing some of the abutter notices and things of that
Great.
really, this young lady has an absolute interest and is very mature for her age.
Great. The assessing software, is there a standard that NH recommend, the state recommends, or?
There's nothing that the state recommends. There's 3 different softwares that we're looking at currently, Ann,
Okay.
to see what is the better fit for the town of Plymouth and provides more detailed information. From my understanding, Patriot is an older software that isn't as updated as the newer ones that Steve and Emily are gonna provide information on.
Gotcha. So is it a cloud application that you're looking at, or?
The new softwares are a cloud application.
All right, cool. That's all I have. Thank you.
Any other questions for Scott? Nope. All right.
Bill is speeding down
he's here.
Reservoir Road
Speeding
now.
up
I'm
the-
speeding down
the
Highland
hall.
Street, and I guess he made it here, so.
Let's not put that on the public
It
record.
wasn't speeding.
Actually, I was going to speed down that little shortcut. There was a cop there.
Oh, no. Good thing you didn't.
Just flash your lights. I hear they really like that.
Oh, yeah, they did.
Sure.
Well, while we're still short on time, we're not up to the time for the public hearing yet, I'm gonna take an appointment. So I've got a letter here from Matt Yeton. Dear Select Board, I'm writing to express my interest and formally request an appointment to a full member position on the Planning Board. Over the past few years, I've been diligently attending the board's meetings as a member of the public and have observed their efforts put forth. My current seats on the Housing Committee, Budget Committee, and CIP Committee have provided me valuable insights into effective operations and decision-making processes. I firmly believe my skills and experiences would make me an asset to the Planning Board. I'm confident in my ability to actively contribute to the board's goals and collaborate effectively with other board members. I assure you that if appointed, I will dedicate my time and effort to fulfilling the responsibilities of the position to the best of my abilities. Thank you for considering my request for appointment and obtaining a full member position on the Planning Board. I eagerly anticipate the opportunity to contribute to the board's endeavors and look forward to the possibility of working alongside fellow dedicated individuals in this civic engagement. Feel free to contact me at phone number or via email address if you require any further information or have questions regarding my request. Thank you for your time. Matt Yeton.
Hey.
I assume we have a open.
Right, did somebody step down?
We do. Rebecca will be stepping down at the end of March, and this position would be effective April 1st.
Okay, great.
I'll make a motion to appoint Matt Yeton to the Planning Board.
I'll second.
Any discussion?
Yeah, Rebecca can't step down.
Yeah, it's a big loss. She's good.
Matt has been fantastic too, though, so good.
Rebecca's done an
That we have
outstanding
someone,
job
yeah.
in her tenure, but I
Yeah,
think
she'll be
Matt will.
missed. For sure. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Now, do I have originals here somewhere, Ann?
No, I have them all.
Okay. You can probably just, not that one.
Oh, don't sign that yet.
Oh, that's a different one.
We're not ready for that one yet.
Oh, you're talking about the original for the appointment? You
Yeah.
can sign the one that you have, I'm
Let me
sorry.
sign the one I have. Scott, do we want to talk through this HVAC project?
I think that might take a little longer, Zach, but we could do the motion for the capital reserve fund withdrawal.
The Pease Library?
Yes.
Yep, let's talk about that one.
And you want to take that?
Yep, let me just find the right one here. So the Select Board have the authorization to remove capital reserve funds specifically for the library building capital reserve fund. And the trustees of the library are looking to do painting in the children's room, front stairwell, young ladies library association room, and 2 study rooms. They did receive 3 quotes. In order to pay for this, we're asking for the board to make a motion to remove $4,890 from the Pease Library Building Maintenance Fund for this painting. They did get 3 quotes as well. As you look through your package, you should see the entire package there. So you don't have to sign the purchase order when we get to that. All I'm asking for is a motion and for the board to sign the request from the trustees, to the trustees asking for those funds.
Okay, I'll make a motion to withdraw $4,890 from the Capital Reserve Fund from the Pease Public Library Building Maintenance Fund.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
So, send that around, Ken, please.
Yep. Do we need to do one for the other capital reserve? There's 2 lines there.
No, it should have all been on one.
Okay.
We're good. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I was like, oh, let's do that one too. Nope, same one. Oh, it's actually on here 3 times.
Yes, and I didn't realize that it was, I wasn't paying attention to the number when it was put on here, and it's under 10,000, so Scott can actually sign that purchase order, so you don't have to sign that either.
I like knocking off 3 agenda items in one
Done.
swoop like that. It's nice.
Good. Like,
Send that back.
I have 2 other quick sign items if you wanted me to keep
Yeah,
going.
let's do 'em.
All right, so we have a delegation of deposit authority. And Mary Ann, I will ask you not to sign this, please. This is for Melinda Barnsley to be able to do deposits and transfer funds to the state of New Hampshire, and it has been approved by our town treasurer. Melinda has now, she's been certified, she went to the training, so we're ready to step her up to the next step.
have we done a background check?
2 or 3 times.
Excellent, excellent.
Would you like the results of that?
That's right.
Nah.
The next item that I have is, we have 3 very old liens, one from 2012, one from 2013, and one from 2014. And these were tax relief liens. The property sold, and the town now has received their funds in the amount of $10,531.58. That check came in last week. There's 3 places. Each one is a separate lien release, please.
Anna's being very modest about that, and due diligence and going after collecting the liens that were on that property made all the difference in the world in getting this check here on money that was due to the town. So, nice job, Ann.
Thanks, Ann.
Work.
The other ones I have are going to take a few more minutes, so
Yeah, we probably only have another 30 seconds to kill.
I'll wait.
Better hurry then.
You're fine.
Chairman, these speakers work?
That's a good question.
You're back here, that's all I'm asking.
Yeah,
They do.
I think they normally do. Dan, are those speakers on?
Yeah.
Just probably need to speak up.
Turn them up a little. Yeah, okay, there you go.
A reminder's good for us, though.
Somebody's gotta look out after the interests of the spectators.
I didn't do that one.
All right, well, with that, let's open a public hearing. So Plymouth Select Board, we're having a public hearing for the purpose of taking public comment for the upcoming Highland Street roadway project. This is the second hearing to allow the public to present concerns, ask any questions related to the redesign, reconstruction, and improvement of the area between Old Ward Bridge Road to Broadway Street along Highland Street. The preliminary scope includes roadway construction, realignment of intersections, sidewalk improvements, and installation of granite curbing to this roadway. Project's being partially funded through an 80-20 grant between the New Hampshire Department of Transportation and the town of Plymouth. Residents and taxpayers who utilize this roadway and live within the area have been strongly encouraged to attend this meeting. We had a very good first hearing, I thought, with lots of good public comment, and hopefully we'll get some more this evening. Josh, do you want me to have you give an intro to the little before we go? Or
I've got a whole I just got booted offline.
Perfect. So so what we'll do is Josh has got a presentation he's gonna give on the project, the area that we're talking about. And once we get through that, we'll take public comment, and anyone who wants to ask questions or speak, you just come to the podium, tell us your name, and then ask your question.
I think I'm coming back. I'm back. All right.
I think that stays together.
Share screen.
And then
All right. That should show up. All right. Hopefully I don't get kicked off. All right. Josh McAllister with HEB Engineers. Here with me is Aaron Lamar. He's the design engineer on this project for us. And there's a sign-in sheet going around, so anybody who's here, please sign in so we can get that on record. The purpose of our meeting here today is to give you a general overview of where we are with this project. I'm going to talk this way. I know there's more people behind me, but
more of those sheets?
we have 10 of them total, so we have some we can share. But this is the same presentation.
Yeah,
here.
everything that is going to be on the screen. So everything that's in these sheets is also up there.
So it's a general overview of why we're here. We are going to talk about the project. We're going to talk about what we've been analyzing. We are in the middle of the engineering study phase for this project. So we're reviewing alternatives, looking at what the town would like to see along Highland Street, and looking at all the alternatives for this project. And so, and at the end, I'll discuss where we are in that process. This is a slide from our first meeting. We identified early on in this project that there are 4 primary goals to what we're trying to accomplish here for Highland Street. We're trying to provide safe ADA compliant pedestrian infrastructure within the project limits, improve intersection safety and enhance modes of pedestrian access, provide connectivity for adjacent public spaces, including schools, businesses, and residential neighborhoods, and then be sensitive to known concerns. The section that we're talking about again stretches from Broadway Street to Old Ward Bridge Road, Reservoir Road intersection along Highland Street. It's about 2,000 feet of Highland Street, and it's pretty much a section that has bad sidewalks, and the other sections don't. So it's a very logical place for this project to be looking at. Just to review where we are in the project, this project started with a request for qualifications for engineers in spring of 2023. We executed our contract with the town. HEB was selected in the summer of 2023, and we are in the design and permitting phase of this project. There are 3 chunks of design and permitting. The first chunk is an engineering study where we look at alternatives. That is then reviewed, and a preferred alternative is selected by the community. We then submit that to DOT for their review, and when they review and provide us with authorization to move into preliminary design, we will start getting into some detailed design activity and permitting for the project. Then there's another review by DOT, and then we would get into preparation of construction plans, project manuals, contract documents, and all of that for bidding, ideally in spring of 2025. This project is anticipated to be executed during the construction season of 2025. So far in this process, we've had several meetings. We've had the local concerns meeting where Aaron and I were here on January 8th to discuss for us to hear what the community's concerns were for this section of Highland Street. We took that information, we processed that information, and started looking at what alternatives exist for Highland Street. These themes that came up were sidewalk access during construction, vehicle speed on the roadway, crosswalk improvements for pedestrian refuge, intersection improvements around the school intersection, and then maintenance during poor weather conditions. Additionally, we had, it's not on here, but we had another meeting with school district representatives and heard a lot of the same conversations, specifically around the intersection, traffic in the intersection, pedestrian access for children through the intersection, and all of those things. So a lot of similar themes in and around safety along this stretch of Highland Street. This past week, we had a meeting with town staff where we intended on reviewing the alternatives that were analyzed and determine a preferred alternative. And at that meeting, under normal process, we would determine a preferred alternative, and then we would come back in a forum like this and present the selected alternative and discuss that with the community. And you'll see as we get through here, we have not done that, and there's several reasons for that. And so we're going to treat this meeting as an update, as well as some additional input opportunity on what we're actually looking at for solutions, whereas previously we really weren't providing any input on alternatives. Just to recap, the town submitted applications to the Transportation Alternatives Program through DOT and was awarded a $1,329,477.28 project award, which is an 80-20 project where 80% of the funds come through the TAP program and 20% is through a town match. So this puts a lot of federal requirements on the project, so that's why there was a process for selecting the engineer. There's a process that we're following for public input, a process we're following for engineering study, and ultimately each step of the way has a defined process that we will be going through. So to kind of analyze for you what we've looked at, I'm going to go through and try to explain our process through the engineering study. We have to look at different types of alternatives for the project area. And so what we looked at, and you'll see here, I'll show an alternative and then I'll show a plan. The plan is going to be kind of hard to look at. It's not very technical at this point. It's just kind of informative, but it'll be a little bit more informative when we get to the intersection options. So what we've looked at are alternatives for the roadway, the actual road structure from Broadway Street to the intersection with Reservoir and Old Ward Bridge Road. And in this area, we looked at alternatives for what we could do with the road to kind of meet our pedestrian safety requirements, our crosswalk requirements, our vehicle speed requirements, and so on. So the first alternative we looked at was to reduce the width of the roadway, to reduce the actual paved surface area and lane width of the roadway from what is above and below this project area. You know, above Old Ward Bridge Road, there's a very specific cross section with lane widths and breakdown lane widths and all of that, shoulders. And then below Broadway, it's a similar cross section in width, and it's wide. It's quite wide. So one section that we looked at was as you come up the hill around the corner from Broadway toward Old Ward Bridge Road and Reservoir Road was to reduce the width of the overall paved area, which would create a feeling of narrowing the road, which would help provide some traffic calming activity through the reduction of speed. Especially when you come up around the corner, there's a lot of extra pavement there. That will be part of that would be bringing it down to this narrow section, restoring some grass area as you come up above that hill. Narrower road widths generally result in slower traffic speeds. It also has a positive impact on how far we have to grade outside of our roadway. How when we have to do work and then tie into the slopes, especially as you come around that corner, you've got the big drop down to the stream area and the culvert crossing. Wider road widths in this area would require a lot more construction activity outside of the roadway right-of-way. This option and any option we looked at the roadway all include a bituminous sidewalk with granite curb on the north side of the road and then granite curb on the south side. So it's a similar cross-section when you look at the sidewalk and the other side of the road, granite, similar in that manner. Sidewalk size the same, everything, just a narrower roadway. So we would have 11-foot lanes and it's a 2-foot shoulder outside the white line. Up above and below, and you'll see it's our next roadway alternative, it's 5 feet. Also within this alternative, to just look at construction costs, we're looking at what we can do for material selection inside the roadway surface. The first option is to do a full depth reconstruction of the road, which would be pull out all the material that's there, put in all brand new gravels and build and repave the road. The other option is to reclaim this road. So basically come in and grind the asphalt into the underlying gravel materials. That becomes the base gravel for the roadway, compact it, and then pave over that. The reason we looked at these two alternatives is there's a significant cost implication between the two. Removing all that material and putting in new material is much more expensive than reclaiming that. And then there is some conversation with town staff that, the road has been redone, with relatively recent time and rebuilt relatively recently, that the material in a lot of the areas of the road might be acceptable for reuse and likely could help reduce the cost of the road. But we would have to look at some of the failures that exist in the pavement surface now to make that determination. So these plans are kind of hard to read, but this is what would be in our engineering study. The yellow portion on this is the roadway, is the paved surface width. The purple on this is the sidewalk. And then the green area is your limits of grading. And I would put your attention to the top right corner here on the screen. That's coming around the corner. And you'll see that green area is relatively narrow outside of our sidewalk. In the next option, you'll see why we're considering a different alternative in roadway width when you see where that extends.
You can interpret that for us a little bit. Where does the road start and where does the road end?
Sure. The top left one on the screen right now, that is the intersection with Reservoir Road and Old Ward Bridge Road. The bottom right is the intersection with Broadway Street. So it goes top to bottom, left to right.
So the bottom left is going up the hill and the top right is on the top of the hill?
The bottom right is the intersection with Broadway.
Right, got that.
Then you go up from that one. If you're on the bottom right, you go to the one above it. That would be coming up around the corner, around the curve, which is the curve is on the right-hand side of that screen. And then you'd go to the bottom left. These are actually plans that would be on top of each other, and they don't sit well side by side on a screen, but it's top to bottom on both of them. Similar considerations for our second roadway alternative. The primary difference in this is that we would be looking at matching the 5-foot wide shoulder that exists above the Old Ward Bridge Reservoir Road intersection and below the Broadway Street intersection. Everything else is the same, except that with the wider road, we're probably encouraging higher vehicle speeds. So the benefit of the narrower road section is that we would likely encourage lower vehicle speeds, which is better for the kind of the area that we're at and the conversations that we heard from everybody at our previous meeting. Material selections, same consideration. We're again, we're going to have the same sidewalk and granite curb as the previous selection or alternative, but also we looked at a full depth reconstruction and a reclaim option for this as well. In this alternative, you'll see I pointed out the top right. You can see on the right-hand side the curve. That green area, if we widen the road, is the limits that we would have to chase grading outside of our roadway right-of-way to tie back into existing grades. So much larger impacts on private property in this area, and just a harder construction process. There's 20 feet of grade there, if not more, down to the bottom that we would have to chase for quite a while. So that was one of the detractions from this, is there's an extensive construction cost that goes along with wider roadway surface, wider shoulders, more grading. So it was a much more costly alternative to look at. You'll also notice in the top left, similar to the last one, we're not showing any improvements on the Reservoir Road, Old Ward Bridge Road in these plans, because we felt like those were standalone alternatives. So we're talking about the roadway reconstruction, and then as I've progressed through this conversation, we'll have a conversation about the intersection reconstruction. So basically, when you'll see at the end, what we did is we basically created two projects, and to create one project, you just pick your favorite one here and add them together. There's your project. That's how we broke out our analysis, so that we could analyze alternatives, because the intersection itself is its own project to think about, and it's a little bit different than just roadway reconstruction and sidewalk, to think your way through the considerations of a misaligned intersection with heavy pedestrian traffic and heavy vehicle traffic and all of that. So we'll get to those points. So just to recap on the roadway, we looked at the first two alternatives for the roadway were reconstruct via full depth reconstruction, or reclaim a narrower roadway or a wider roadway. There was a third alternative that we looked at. Part of this consideration is because this project is a transportation alternatives project. It is funded by a program that is responsible for ensuring that pedestrian access and alternative modes of transportation are considered, and it is not a roadway reconstruction program. So sometimes DOT will push back on whether or not the roadway reconstruction is required as part of meeting the transportation alternative goals. So in this alternative, what we are proposing is to mill the existing pavement on Highland between Broadway and Old Ward Bridge Road and Reservoir Road at where it is, and then reconstruct or build new sidewalks and the curbing on the north side of the road. So sidewalks on the north side and curbing on the south side, as they are located now. So we'd get the same sidewalks as the other two alternatives. We would not get the roadway reconstruction as part of it, but we'd get a new surface. With that surface, though, it matches the narrow roadway width alternative. So we end up with the 1 or the 2 foot shoulders with the 11-foot lanes. So we'd gain the benefits of the narrow roadway that's different than the above and below sections of roadway. It may not address the subsurface roadway issues as part of it, but it could meet the goals of the project when it comes to pedestrian access and safety. So that project itself, the plan's going to look exactly like, when I show it, it's going to look exactly like the first plan, because roadway widths or lane widths, everything are exactly the same as the first alternative, just the construction process is different. We're just going to go grind the pavement and then build sidewalks and put curbing on the other side and then pave over it. We would, with all of these options, it should be noted, I should have said this too, that we are going to create safe, appropriate crosswalk locations with safe, appropriate landing areas. So if you're going across the Smith Street, you're going across the Reservoir, you're going to have appropriate crosswalk landing areas. They'll be ADA compliant. So that's all part of all of these projects as well. So we didn't really analyze alternatives for the sidewalks, because the sidewalk needs to be rebuilt, and it needs to exist in a safe manner. And so that's a baseline, and we didn't think there was a need for alternatives there, since the type of sidewalk construction exists up and down. And so we just kept that as the baseline and just looked at what the alternatives were as far as the roadway.
Questions or no?
I'll take questions whenever. It's
Steve, if you're going to ask a question, could you go to the microphone just so that we can sure it's captured?
So, I'm interested. Steve Rand from town.
Thank you.
So I'm interested in the cross-section of this here because so what we're saying is that there's going to be a white stripe on the edge of the roadway, 11 foot wide, and then there's going to be some space between there and the curb, which protects this pedestrian sidewalk, right? So how much space between the white line and the curb? Because we have none now, right?
2 feet.
Right, so we're 2 feet?
2 feet.
2 feet. So that's a little margin for safety. And it does the narrowing thing that you're talking about. And it's going to be uniform throughout, right?
Yes.
So you're going to have continue to do that?
Yes.
The center line stays about where it is?
Yes.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
No problem. It's actually a pretty good spot if anybody else had questions, because that would pretty much the whole roadway, the roadway section before we get into the
Yeah,
intersections.
that's actually a great call out. Does anybody have any questions before we move into the intersection portion of this? Comments?
Into the
thoughts?
exciting part.
Yeah, please.
My name is Bill Kendall, live on Carmel. Is this going to address any underlying storm or sewer, or are we just taking the top off and going over it?
So there's a couple different answers to that.
I'm not trying to get ahead of you.
No, you're not. No, you're not. With the full depth reconstruction, there's a lot more drainage consideration for stormwater in that option. In the reclaim option, was it similar with the reclaim, or did we do less drainage alternatives? Same. So in the reclaim option and the full depth reconstruction option, because we're in the road, we were gonna look at upgrading as needed. We haven't analyzed any of the drainage needs yet, but we kept an allowance in our cost estimation for drainage improvements. In the mill and overlay option, not nearly as much, because we're not getting into the road. Maybe there's opportunities to change grates and those types of things, but those haven't been.
Basins, but you're not going like crazy
We're not going
down.
to pull out. We're probably not. We haven't really analyzed it, but we haven't intended to remove all the catch basins in that option and put in new ones. Not all new drainage pipe in the mill and overlay option. We do have consideration for that in the full depth reconstruction option, but there may be the opportunity to rework the inlets of catch basins.
Okay, thank you.
Zach, question
Yeah, please.
About water and sewers project.
Yep.
Yeah, Mary Cooney, 78 Highland Street. Now, I assume this doesn't go anything below Broadway,
It does not.
does not. Is there any possibility, I mean, there's been a lot of degradation of these sidewalks down there. Are they going to possibly,
Not as part of this project.
not at all?
We'd have to address that under a different project.
And I should answer.
Yeah, Ann had a question about water sewer.
Yeah, I missed answering that. Water and sewer, the Plymouth Village Water and Sewer District is moving forward with a project in a lot of different areas, a part of town, in this area as well. So they will be executing their own project with respect to utility upgrades. That's not part of this project.
And our hope is that Plymouth Village Water and Sewer would go through first, and then we would come through after to finish the project.
So, didn't Water and Sewer do all the upgrades to the lines going down last time this was repaved? No?
Not that I'm aware of. What I'm
Let's-
told by Plymouth Village Water and Sewer is they would be replacing the water and sewer lines in this area.
Because remember when they repaved it, then Water and Sewer went back and cut in the grates after the fact? And that's where a lot of the failures were, around the areas where they cut the pavement to put these. So in any event, that'll be corrected.
Steve?
So Steve Rand, I'm kind of off of this map, to be honest, but, I mean, my property's here in the second layer behind the houses on the right-hand side of Highland Street, going west. And my concern is about stormwater coming off of this road that lands in Old Ward Bridge, on Old Ward Bridge Street. So at the present time, all the surface water comes off of Highland Street and Old Warbridge Road. It comes into an inadequate drainage system that doesn't get the water going down the hill. It lands on my property. And I would really like to correct that if possible, because it's making a swamp there. And it is a swamp because a series of town road agents decided that was the easiest thing to do. If we could fix that and make sure that it's connected to the down conduit and adequate, that would be really great. So there's a lot of water that comes off that road, and of course it has to go someplace. I'd rather it not be landing, be offloaded onto my property. We can talk about that later.
Yeah, Bill.
So I think last time you mentioned the fact that you're going to like redo the grading so that it won't encourage like a bank and a racetrack. It'll be the banking the other way, or
We're looking at that as part of the design considerations. It's not part of the alternative analysis, but what we're going to do is ensure that our roadway, cross section, whether it's crown, super elevated, or however we handle that, will be addressed as part of when we get into preliminary design. It'll meet appropriate standards for that. We've had our transportation engineer at our office take a look at it already and start navigating through what his thought process is there, but the fine details of that are not solidified yet.
Good. Yes.
Hi, Jen Schmidt. I'm representing Lakes Region Mental Health Center. We're at 81 Highland, so I believe we're just below where the project's going to start. But just wondering implications for accessing. I imagine we're right at kind of like the foot of where the staging and equipment's going to be. Do you anticipate any, obstacles or issues or power cutoff that could impact our patients accessing?
No, access to facilities, electrical, all of that should remain as they are. Again, it's a construction project, so there will be, there'll probably be one lane of traffic at one point in time, but access to all facilities, driveways, residential or commercial, will be maintained. There should be no utility issues. Like, there will be driveway work, so, we will, during the process, the construction engineer and the contractor will communicate, hey, we're going to be here at this time, which is just part of the game. But no, everybody should have access to everything.
Okay.
Yeah, there will
Thank
be no
you.
cutoff.
Thanks.
Any other questions? I had one actually. The last time we had this done, one of the concerns we ended up having was about the thickness of the pavement. So there was this large debate of whether or not the underlying road was causing the cracking, or if it was paved too thin and that's why it was cracking. This was an issue that was a large enough issue that it, resulted in some like legal disputes between us and the contractors. How can we assure that that sort of debate doesn't come out of the other side of this?
We have geotechnical investigation that will be done in this area, so we're still awaiting that geotechnical report, which would provide us the information about the subsurface materials, what type of materials they are, how thick the asphalt pavement is. All of that will be garnered to us, so that we'll have that. We would then, if we're doing a full depth reconstruction, you're going to get a very consistent roadway reconstruction. It's also very expensive. If we do a reclaim, it will be relatively consistent material for a certain depth below the asphalt pavement, and then we'll have an appropriate pavement section on top. One of the considerations as to what the contractor is going to be putting in the ground, there will be a requirement to have a construction engineer on site. It won't be HEB, it'll be a different engineering firm, but somebody has to watch the construction while it's happening to ensure that what is being placed is what's in the plans. So there's a couple different fail safes. The funding agencies don't want to get into that situation either.
Good. All right, if there's no more comments from the audience, let's move on to the intersection.
Yeah, let's go. All right, so I just wanted to run through some of these costs. You'll remember at the beginning, I said the town has just above $1.3 million of total funds. That includes construction costs, engineering costs, construction engineering costs, and any right-of-way costs so far. You'll notice that these numbers are most of them are well in excess of the available funding. The mill and overlay option is $1.4 million, which is just about what's there now, but doesn't touch the intersection because we haven't even talked about that yet. So just to give an idea of the magnitude of construction costs for this 2,000 linear feet of road, for what we're looking to do, we're ranging between $3.6 million for the widened full depth reconstruction to 1.4, which is just the mill and overlay and sidewalk options. So that is just a baseline understanding on the cost of just the roadway work.
Before we move into the intersection, can you talk a little bit about us being able to go back to the state
Sure.
and ask for additional funding?
Sure. So this is a good time to talk about it. We obviously don't have that money. There are opportunities within the state of New Hampshire in these programs to get your project reviewed by what's called the Estimate Review Committee. They will take a look at projects, identify what the needs are for the project, and look at whether there are opportunities to add additional funding. So I have reached out. The reason this project is not a preferred action meeting or proposed action meeting is in conversations with Ann and Scott, we didn't feel right coming here with a preferred action that didn't fit the budget without knowing the answers on how to get the money that's necessary to do the project the way it needs to be done. So where we're at right now is, and I'll get to the process or what our plans are in the next steps, is we want to get answers to that. About how we can get to a project that meets the needs for the town of Plymouth and the area between the two intersections. So this is just the first glimpse at how hard it is to get to that $1.3 million estimate.
Josh, where did the 1.3 come from? How was that determined?
It was a state estimated amount that they came up with back in 2021
Okay,
of the estimate if it was done then.
okay. Thank you.
So moving forward, the next area of the project that we analyzed for alternatives was the intersection. The intersection is a misaligned intersection. I don't think I really need to go into the details of what's going on at the intersection. You know it better than we do. We looked at a roundabout alternative there. It's an oblong roundabout. It is not a normal circle roundabout just because of the way the intersection is positioned. It's designed to meet large vehicle traffic through it and turning movements for large buses. It has a mountable center island to accommodate truck traffic that may end up going through the intersection to ensure that we can keep going. It also will mitigate stacking of traffic during peak hours. Typically at intersections, everybody, especially this one, everybody's kind of moving in the same direction, and this will keep things moving. You're a community that has a roundabout. You're aware of how they work, so it's not new information for you. So this is an alternative that we looked at, and it also fits really well for intersections that you'll see when we show it, for intersections that are kind of misaligned. It also will provide some additional safety benefits with roundabouts. You create built-in pedestrian refuge, better crossing locations. It also creates slower vehicle traffic. Vehicles entering a roundabout are slowing down, and the vehicles exiting a roundabout have already slowed down. So the vehicle traffic in and around this intersection will be generally slower than it is currently. There will be nobody just straight through the intersection any longer because they're going to have to give it a little wiggle to get through. And so it does have some downsides. All four corners, when we get there, all four corners require some property acquisition on the town's behalf. There's actually no way to correct the intersection without property acquisition of some level. So that's part of the conversation here as we go through this. And then there's some utility infrastructure, poles, some stone walls in the area that would need to be accommodated as well.
You can't have a single crossing guard then, right?
Well, I would
Stand in the
think that
middle.
With as soon as that was the case, would you need the crossing guard anymore?
Well, they're not going to be stopping.
I mean, I would think you
I
would.
would think you
would eliminate
would.
the crossing
Yeah, I
guard.
think
No, I would still think you would.
there's too much volume there.
You've got
yeah.
a bunch of cars coming out of the school. It's just gonna keep going and not stopping.
Hi, sorry, comment from the public here, as you guys are debating this. My name is Elizabeth Taylor, Plymouth resident and facilities manager for the high school. We met at the town officials meeting. My guess in talking with some of the other people at the school is we need a crossing guard there. If you've got a rotary, which I do personally, I'm not saying the school does, I personally like the idea of the rotary, we have to have a crossing guard. I'm not saying it has to be a police officer, but we have so many little kids that are walkers through there. This is going to slow the traffic down, but we still have to get those kids, you can't ask them to read when it's a good time to step out in front of a car. And I just want us to keep that in mind. Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, we had that conversation, I think, in our meeting with the school district and our meeting with the town last week, whether a crossing guard would, or somebody would be there. And you know, we weren't going to make that call, but it might be prudent.
Yeah, I would think, though, that crossing guard, suddenly their job would be about helping
Managing
people
cross-sections.
crossing
Yes.
rather
You're
than,
not stopping traffic.
Yeah, you're not doing any
generally,
traffic control,
Trying to
really.
keep traffic moving, and you're helping cross the crosswalks, which are offset
much
from the
more
intersection.
similar to what happens at the bottom near Broadway, right?
Yes.
We have that officer who's there who helps people across the sidewalk but isn't standing in the street directing traffic.
And the key, it's hard to see here, but there are, on all four corners, some of them are small, some of them are big, there are hatched triangles. They're kind of like dark shaded. Some, if you look at the turn into the school, there's a dark shaded in the pavement area. It actually extends out to the limits of the green. On all four corners, those shaded areas would be the limits, the estimated limits of property acquisition. So on the three of the corners, it's not so significant, but the turning movement into the school is a much larger area of need to access. However, you'll see that it's actually less property acquisition than realigning Old Ward Bridge Road. Which we'll get to. So this is kind of what it would look like based on our initial conversations, and just a quick look at it would be sort of an oblong, oval roundabout for the movements of the vehicles through. And then the second alternative we looked at was realigning the intersection. Basically, what we were looking to do is realign Old Ward Bridge Road to meet Reservoir Road at its current location, because there's less constriction on either side of Old Ward Bridge Road at that intersection. This would allow the two roads to enter Highland Street at the same location. We would modify the curb returns to make sure that it would accommodate school bus traffic getting into that right-hand turn into the school and getting out of the school without crossing traffic and all of that, and just creating more conflict. There is still some property acquisition required as part of this, and again, the same but not as significant relocation of Stonewall. And so on the top of this, the top right of this would be the jog that we would look at for Old Ward Bridge Road to come in and meet, as close as we could get it, Reservoir Road. And we looked at this because Reservoir Road is pretty well sandwiched between two residential properties, and jogging it around is just not feasible. Whereas the driveway into Old Ward Bridge Road has a little bit more undisturbed area on either side of it that we can shift into. Now, again, these are proposed alternatives. We have not had detailed conversation with any property owners at this point in time. I'm not aware if there are any in the room, but I'm sure we'd find out shortly. But these are the conversations for these alternatives to really correct what's going on at that intersection the way everybody has asked us to do. Now, in this circumstance, this alternative does not reduce traffic speeds. You know, it does give us a better turning movement into Old Ward Bridge Road, but it's still a straight through shot into right through Highland Street. So while we have narrower road widths, there's still nothing slowing traffic down there. We have addressed the crosswalk locations a little bit by making them 90 degrees and, you know, in the mouth of roadways versus diagonally across and landing in the same place. So there is some minor adjustment there, and obviously the reconstruction of the landing areas so there's appropriate pedestrian refuge when you get out of the intersection. But this intersection will generally operate the way it operates now, just will be aligned. So it'll create less kind of awkwardness as you're entering Highland Street, but doesn't meet a lot of the goals as far as, improvements in vehicle speeds and pedestrian safety.
I do have a question for you.
Yes, sir.
I see this keeps the pedestrian walkway on what would be the right side of the road, which means anybody walking up Reservoir Road would have to cross the road yet again in order to be walking on the proper side of the road, because there's no sidewalks on Reservoir.
Correct.
And so I think that's a thing that we need to think about in this design, is that we're asking someone to then cross the road again where there is no crosswalk to do so.
So from Reservoir, can you repeat? I'm just trying to follow on my screen here.
So Reservoir, normal pedestrian
Walking
traffic,
toward the intersection.
walking towards traffic. So
Yes.
they should be on the left.
Correct.
But this crosswalk from Old Ward Bridge Road takes them onto the right side of Reservoir
Correct.
Road.
So the exit the intersection to leave, they'd cross.
They'd have to cross again if they're walking up Reservoir.
If they're going up.
Yes.
Yes, but they're on the correct side
if
of the
they're
road
going
going
down.
in. So because there's no sidewalks on Reservoir Road, you're going to create that conflict one way or the other.
Right.
That's the nature of the beast.
Unless, of course, the crosswalk, well,
Unless we built a
There's
cross.
no sidewalk on Reservoir at all, though. is
no,
there?
there is none at all, other than that first little section. And I've seen
Yeah,
people,
he's basically saying
they
you
have to
come
really
here
look
and cross
carefully
there and then go up.
when they cross to the other side, because that's the right side they should be walking on,
Right.
with no
No
sidewalks.
sidewalk, yeah.
Just wanted to bring that up.
Right? And then the last alternative we looked at was just reconfiguring the pedestrian crossings at the existing intersection. This would create, putting the pedestrian crossings in the right location. We'd reconstruct the intersection in kind in its current geometry. We would also construct better landing refuge for pedestrians, so you'd get better sidewalk infrastructure, better crosswalk locations. You'd gain a little bit of safety improvement for pedestrian crossing, similar to the last option. You don't gain the safety improvement of the vehicle movements coming into an aligned intersection, because we're still misaligned, and you're not gaining any of the vehicle speed adjustments that you'd get from a roundabout. So it's kind of the same intersection you have now, rebuilt with better crosswalk locations, is essentially what we have. So it looks a lot like this. We would, let's see here, we've got Reservoir Road on the bottom. Crosswalks are almost exactly the same as the previous option, except that we're just not shifting Old Ward Bridge Road over. This option doesn't have significant property acquisition. There's still a little bit, I think, on the corner. If you're looking toward Highland on Reservoir, on the left corner to build the safe landing area for the sidewalk, there's a small property acquisition need there, but the other three the other three corners of the intersection remain as they are, with no significant impacts. So it's new. It would be new with more appropriate sidewalk and crosswalk locations. And similar to the last option, or the last alternative, here are the costs for those three alternatives. You've got a roundabout alternative for about $1 million. You have a realigned intersection for about $970,000.
About $1 million.
It's about $1 million. And then you've got the reconfigured pedestrian crossings for $520,000. And let me touch on that cost of the $520,000. Because we didn't include the intersection, it doesn't seem like it would cost $520 to just realign the crosswalks, but we didn't include the reconstruction of the intersection in our other estimates, so that is part of that cost, is the actual rebuilding of the roadway in that area as well. So that's baked into all three of those options, is the work necessary to build in that intersection, independent of the option that you.
Is that cost the full depth cost?
That's on that one, full depth for the intersection. Yeah, it's full depth on that one, so there may be some cost savings.
There might be some savings there.
Yes.
Yeah.
But if we go to the next, we're still at about, was it $1.9 million
If you chose all the cheapest
if you chose the mill and overlay with sidewalks, and you chose the realignment of the intersections, you're at about 1.9, and I'll get to that. So the next steps for us is to continue talking about what our preferred options are. And typically we do that with town staff. I'm expecting to kind of hear a little bit of that here tonight.
Yeah.
So we can build off of that. And then HEB and the town and DOT will get together and try to say, what are our options? The funding is not adequate to meet the needs of the project in any of the options. And how do we get ourselves there? So that's where we're going. So once we have answers on how to get there and how to explore the different funding alternatives, we will then meet and come up with a preferred alternative with HEB and town staff based on the input we have. And then we would present that as a proposed action to the community again in a forum just like this. And we would say, this is what we've chosen. This is how we're going to try to get the additional funds. This is what it's going to cost. And we would then submit our study right after that. And once DOT comments on it, we would move into preliminary design.
And just so we can confirm, these are today's construction costs that are built into these projected costs,
We projected it for 2025.
2025.
2026, we actually went as far as 2026 in projecting
And
costs.
we're building a contingency
Yes,
into this contract or into this construction cost in the event that change orders have to occur throughout the project.
yes.
Does anybody from the public have comments on the intersection specifically?
So I have to tell you that I'm a big roundabout fan. You probably know that because I was really instrumental in getting this one that we have on Main Street. I think it would be wonderful. One of the costs that you would save with that is the manpower costs of all the direction. I'm sure you'll recognize that as a saving in this, even though you may need some crossing guards, which could be, don't we have junior crossing guards anymore? That's not an option.
No. Not from a liability perspective.
Oh, jeez, it's so stupid. It's a great opportunity for those kids to learn how to do something. But that's another editorial comment that I'll just hold to myself, having already not held it to myself.
Well, I'll tell you, Steve, my daughter helped kids cross at that intersection for the past, 7 years, something like that. So
Of course, yes, right. I mean,
that was a junior crossing guard.
So a roundabout is the very best solution to this problem for all the calming effects, all the different for all the different reasons, and I would hold out for that even if it was going to cost me a few bucks, and because anything short of it is a bad solution. And I would want to ask the question about concrete under this roadway. My assumption is there's still some concrete under there.
I don't think so.
Not in that. I don't think there's any in that section because when they tore it up,
Down farther.
when they tore up this recent time, they went all the way down.
Okay, so we're not dealing with any of the old concrete roadway. Well, that's good. So, because we don't need that. That's just fine. This is my friend Mary. She wants to speak as well.
Well,
Again, Mary.
I agree that the roundabout is the way to go because that's what a lot of us on Highland Street have been looking for is the calming effect, slowing down that traffic. You know, the trucks, the cars that just think it's a racetrack. And that's the only alternative I can think that would work for that. One comment I might make is noticing the one downtown, some of those bricks they laid for the inner area are popping up, and maybe there's a better way to do that. But yeah, I've always liked the idea of the roundabout, that calming effect. And it would give a little more green space to some people up on that area of Highland Street.
And I'll say, having been here before that roundabout was on Main Street, we had traffic backed up there all the time prior to that roundabout being there. And this area has only grown and gotten more popular, and it's very smooth and a very easy area of town to pass through.
I will say that when we were still in our house, when they completely dug up Island Street to get down, our walkway used to be flat with the sidewalk into our house, and the sidewalk was flat. Now it's about this big difference. You have to go down into it. And there was when they dug that all up, there was plenty of dust, but there were also things like tools that had been embedded in the road, like a pick, I remember.
Wow.
And I should note too that my understanding of any funding that we would get, that if we were able to find additional funding, so let's say we tried to go get the $1 million for the roundabout, it would be 80-20 match. So it would be a $200,000 expense to the town, which is not small, but it's not the full cost of the roundabout. So that's just another consideration when we're talking about, once we have answers on how we can go about, if and how we can go about finding additional funds from DOT, my understanding is that they're 80-20 funds as well. So you're not bearing the full cost of the additional costs.
So the funds, though, it's not through the TAC. I mean, it's not going down that pathway because that's a 10-year plan type thing.
Well, no, this might, I don't know if it's in the 10-year plan, but it's part of it. It's a funded program. But DOT has funds available to them that they have utilized on other projects. If they find that your project needs don't match the funds that are available, they get creative, I think.
Okay.
Our fingers are crossed.
Yeah. We haven't had and that's the talk. We haven't had the conversations yet. Like we've at HEB, we've had to go through that process before, but it's typically when we get into the design phase, we find something and it increases cost, and then we have to go and help work with DOT to find other alternatives for funding. But this, we know from the beginning we're underfunded, and so that's the crux of the issue right now.
One help is that any ARPA funds that are kicking around, they got to get them out by the end of the year. So.
I know the crosswalk person at this intersection, it's quaint, and this is Plymouth, and it's a nice small town, and everybody knows them, and everybody waves, and it's great. But it's also 2024, and those little things are getting harder to come by. And so my question is, has anybody thought, or I'm sure they have, I hope they have, about hanging a traffic signal over that and be done with it? I was an operations director for 40 years at a private school in Connecticut on a state road with 27,000 cars. They were talking about putting a roundabout in front of my school. And it was just 27, it was 4-lane road. I understand what you're saying, but it's 2024, and I think the way to solve the traffic, I mean, if you sat up there, Howland Street gets 10 cars and then he stops, and then Ward Bridge gets 30 cars, and then the other Highland Street gets 12 cars, and then if somebody's lucky and he spots them coming out of a reservoir, they'll let that person out. But it's hit or miss, and I get it. I've done it. I get it. But put a traffic signal over there, make the side street, Highland Street, Main Street, and when somebody comes out, you can program these things any way you want. Between 2:30 and 4 o'clock, you can give priority to one side street versus the other side street. Engineering, as these two gentlemen can attest, you can do anything.
So
And I'm just wondering if a traffic signal has been discussed at this intersection. Thank you.
It's a great question. I think if we were going to, and Josh, correct me if I'm wrong, but if we were going to do a traffic signal there, the first thing we would have to do is align the intersection.
Yeah, we'd have to.
Correct.
So you'd already be in
You have to.
you'd be in for 970, and then you would have to.
Right, but we don't want to do this and then 5 years, 7 years, 10 years, come back and do it again. I mean,
Well, that assumes you have to do it again on a roundabout, but I think a roundabout probably, again, you would know more about the traffic, but I would guess with the amount of volume on that road, a roundabout's going to serve that
On a single,
roadway
it's
for
a
quite a
single
while.
lane road with very distinct peaks. The roundabout, it will provide a more efficient use of the intersection than a traffic signal will.
What are the car counts on Highland Street?
About 7,000 cars a day, give or take.
So during the school traffic on a roundabout, how far back is Highland Street gonna back up? I've seen
think
it
less-
backed up almost all the way to Broadway.
I think we would see it back up less than it backs up today, with the roundabout.
Okay.
It's higher.
I would tend to
Good
agree.
questions, though. Thank you.
We did not analyze a traffic, we briefly discussed the traffic signal, but the efficiencies of a roundabout on a road like this, it creates a moving intersection. You know, we live, Aaron and I both live in Conway, and we have significant traffic on the north-south road as you're in and around the Walmart area, and it's now Tractor Supply and Settlers Green, and probably comparable to the traffic that goes on Highland Street. And I am never backed up in any of the roundabouts, and we have 3 in series. So they keep things moving. And you know that your downtown has a very efficient roundabout, and you'll hit 4th of July or you'll hit something big and you'll sit there for a little bit, but it's not, it keeps things moving, and especially in those non-super peak times, it'll keep it going.
I think our roundabout here, our collision counts are very low as well, where that's not always true with traffic light-based
Exactly.
intersections.
Yeah,
And
there's
you've
fewer.
got younger drivers and those kinds of things coming in and out of the high school. I generally think that's a
And
it's
our
a pretty
three
wise-
roundabouts in Conway are immediately out of the intersection of the high school as well. So you come down Eagles Way, you're in a main intersection, and those cars are stacked up all the way up Eagles Way coming down, similar to what you're going to see at yours, same size schools. And then they all go right through to the north-south road, and none of the roundabouts in the north-south road are backed up, even with all the cars exiting the high school. So it's an efficient intersection option.
All right, any other public comment on this? Yeah, please.
Howdy, y'all. 144 Highland Street, name's Mitchell Hoare. We are one of the properties that is abutting the 2 roads that you're going to likely have to acquire some of the property for. So I know you ran out of physical copies, but I would love to get either another physical copy or an electronic copy so I could share with the. Oh,
Okay.
thank you so much.
They're hard to read there. We could actually provide you with some, if the alternative moves forward with acquisition, if we end up going in that, one of the first steps that we'll have to do after the engineering study is start talking with the abutters.
Oh, yeah.
There's no doubt about that.
So, no, we're actually, myself and the fellow people I own this property with, we're very excited to see the renovation done. We own the property. We've been there before. Crazy during traffic hour. So very excited to see the change, but just wanted to have want to keep up to date and be able to have that information so I can provide it to them. So appreciate it. Thank you so much for the copy.
Welcome. Josh, if I may, Zach.
Yeah, please.
144 Highland Street.
Is that?
Yeah, which of the 4 corners are you?
I would say, I think,
If you're going into Old Ward Bridge Road,
so we're on the Old Bridge Road across from the Main Street. Sorry.
So you're on your property that people go through?
Yes, that is the cut through, yes.
It would be the one on the bottom side.
Over here?
So this is Reservoir Road coming up, so he would be this one that has the cut through that also connects to Old Wood Bridge
Understood.
Road.
All right, I got my orientation right now.
he's
Okay,
the
I see
one.
that.
He's the one we would need the most property from.
Yes.
That's why we're very interested, but still very interested in the reconstruction. Don't have an issue with necessarily, just want to keep up to date
great.
with how everything's progressing. Sorry about
Josh,
that.
one question I think we talked about the other day was the maintenance cost from a roundabout to a regular intersection. Is there any additional, from an engineering perspective, from a construction perspective, from a maintenance perspective, is there additional costs that are associated with maintaining a roundabout versus a regular intersection realigned?
So that would be based on, I think, the selection of your materials for the center island. You know, you've got a roundabout, I think, somebody mentioned, you did, the stones popping out. In Conway, we tried to do an elastomeric kind of polymer thing on ours, make it look like brick, and it's cracking. And so it depends on what you select for that material. You can go as simple as just raised concrete. You'd have sort of mountable granite with concrete on top, and it would be there forever, you know, or not forever, but long enough. It would be highly maintainable. So there's also some complexity to plowing it a little bit and making sure that you're not damaging things, but not a whole lot more than what you're dealing with everywhere else. But you know, you're going to have paved roadway surface. It's really the center island becomes the piece that's a little bit more complicated, and it may need replacement in 10 years or some, depending on the material selection.
So those cobbles that you noticed that were up, was that like due with plowing, or you have no idea, but they're just
I think
raised?
it's when, from what I've seen down on this roundabout, it's when any large vehicle has to utilize that cobble space and the tires turn and they start to turn those
Okay.
cobblestones up and pick them up.
Bad driving.
We noticed when we were my sister and I were in Vienna, they have buses that go around these very small roundabouts, you know, but it certainly slows things down, and they just turn it right around.
And like I said, at the bottom of Kennett High School, at bottom of Eagles Way, those buses, they go straight down the north-south road to get to the northern, you know, to Bartlett and the other communities that provide students to Kennett. They go right through the 3 roundabouts and down the north-south road. So they're definitely utilized and sized appropriately.
We saw some in Ireland, they were just painted circles in the middle of the intersection.
There you go.
Yeah.
I like that.
And
I've seen that as well.
I think that's all I have.
All right. Well, with that, any last comments from the public before we close the hearing?
Got a virtual one?
Oh, yeah, please,
So
Steve.
if it comes to, if for some reason it would come to a question of doing the roadway up to the intersection, or the intersection itself, seems to me as though we should do the intersection. Forget the roadway.
In terms of prioritization.
Right, entire prioritization, you know, like, I don't know if that's, would get to that point, but for my money, I think the intersection is the most important thing. We can spend the money there and wait for the rest. Don't wait very long.
Josh.
I guess that's a great point. We've looked at all these alternatives as sandwiching the roadway reconstruction alternative with the intersection reconstruction alternative, but the roundabout we estimate at $1 million. You have 1.3. So that's there. It fits within the project. You know, so that's another way to look at it. I think similar to what Scott and I were discussing, I think we identify what's available as far as options for gaining additional funds, and then we have build off those further conversations at that point.
Yeah, that's a good point. I failed to mention, anybody on Zoom want to make a comment before we close the hearing?
Yeah, Dan Marion, Point of View Drive, Zach.
Yes.
So I'm looking at the 2024 warrants articles, and there was a small $40,000 expenditure for the Highland Street Improvement Project. Is there anything in the 2025 warrants that this project is going to be going toward, or how does that work?
Yeah, so that's how it would work, is if we move forward with a project that would happen in 2025, then we would, on that next warrant, we would propose a budget line to cover, the 20% match portion or whatever additional portion the town needed to pay. The whole thing actually, but then the taxation portion.
We do have some funding that has already been put aside for this project. So with this $40,000 that we're asking for this year, we're up to about $250,000. And that's.
So we have some of our match already.
That's correct.
Yeah.
And just to follow on, what I'm talking about here. Projects are typically created, not always, but typically created based on an identification of a problem. And I'm assuming that someone alerted the town of a problem, and that's how this project got created. And correct me if I'm wrong there.
State funding.
One of the things that you have to look at is the risks for not doing the project at all. Has there been any discussion about risks for not doing the project, whether it be health and safety or otherwise, drainage, whatever?
This project has been on the town's radar for quite some time. That's why about 5 or 6 years ago, we put additional money into that project ourselves. And then the state has come through now and saying that we were on their 10-year plan and they had moved us up. Therefore, that's why this project has stepped up again. So we actually did a preliminary project and put, I want to say, $400,000 to $500,000 into this roadway already.
Which was a quick fix.
Which it was it was quick, but they did quite a bit at that point as well, which would have cost us as much now, or probably
Quite a bit
double.
more, yeah.
So we have determined it is a priority area, for sure.
Yeah, and in the public hearing we had in January, we had a lot of citizens come and speak to their concerns with the intersection, their concerns with speed on that roadway, pedestrian access. There's definitely been an expressed need from the community.
Okay, so you got some buy-in. That's the one thing that I was kind of worried about, even going into the 2024 warrant meeting. I'm worried about, with taxes and everything, that there's going to be a lot of objection to bigger expenditure items. So if you have all the ducks in a row to argue the point of going through the project, and more importantly, what the risks are of not doing the project, that would be a win for you.
Yeah, good input. All right, anybody else? Bill?
So I imagine that Joe shared with you his core samples.
I have not.
Okay,
So,
well-
he's told me he has them.
Oh, it's kind of eye-opening. But you'll get an idea of where the road's like thin and where it's like.
Yep.
Yep.
Good.
All right, so at 6:22, we'll close the public hearing.
So are you comfortable with what they've talked about here? Are you ready to move forward with that, or need more?
We need to talk to Kevin Russell.
So what he's saying is that,
So I thought that maybe the board would have a brief discussion, sort of some of
Okay.
what we heard, before we completely move off of this.
okay, good, thank you.
Certainly I heard a lot of support for the roundabout option from folks. That's my preferred option.
My preferred as well.
I think doing this project and not realigning that intersection in doing something that, the third option doesn't feel like an option to me.
Josh, are you listening?
Yeah, I am.
Okay, good.
So really, you're talking about, do you realign and not do a roundabout, or do you do the roundabout? At that point, I think the roundabout's just a smarter.
Yeah, because it's,
Right.
the difference in price is 30K.
Nothing, right.
It's 30K, and I think you have a better
A
situation
better
there.
solution.
There are some people that don't like roundabouts in the town, very adamant that we don't, even despite the fact that you can drive any big truck through that rotary downtown, there's still concern that, well,
Is that the concern from people? Is
yeah,
the
well, people with big trucks.
right? Okay, so but that's the only.
Yeah, it's been
There are people
relatively
who will come out
disproven.
against a roundabout, there's no doubt. Like, if we go that route, some people will come out against it, but
Oh, right, because we talked about it with Smith Bridge at one point, and
That's,
and
yeah,
I think
that's.
that's the right
people-
answer there, too.
right,
Yeah,
there were a
well,
lot of
but,
people
you know,
against
it's
it.
not a dead deal, it's not a done deal yet, but yeah, it's a good option.
So that, I don't know what Ted and I seem aligned on that. I don't know how the two of you are feeling.
I'm fine with rotary, actually.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think that we have any other.
I would appreciate if it could actually knock out some of the need for I don't think it will, but yeah, as far as like a,
Maybe you have a less expensive crossing guard?
maybe.
Well, this crossing
I
guard
agree. Your
responsibility,
Daughter could
Can we-
still, or?
the
Can
crossing
give
guard responsibilities is
Josh and I the
diminished.
opportunity to see
Perhaps.
what
yeah.
additional fund, I agree
Yeah.
with what you're saying with the roundabout, totally agree. But be able to go back to the review committee and see the possibility of getting some additional funding.
For sure, for
Okay.
sure. Yeah, I just wanted you to sort of have a feeling from the board of what our
Yeah.
preferred option there was. And then the second thing is where were people feeling in terms of wide or narrow?
I would
I'd
go
like
with a
narrow.
narrow.
Okay, I like narrow as well, which then gives us three options when we're talking about narrow. It's narrow with full depth, narrow with just the surface, or do the reclaim, right? I kind of nail that-ish.
Well, that's
Yeah.
what I was getting at with the core is you may not be able to, or trust, if you just like grind up what's there, if the road's actually like that thick, it's not gonna give you much to, well, how much is gonna be like a finished course? Like,
All the options are different.
Yeah.
So 3 or 4, probably 4 inches of pavement on this type of road, I think is what we estimated that. 4 inches, it's a high traffic road, 4 inches of pavement would give you kind of a sturdier section. If we were rebuilding the road in full, it would probably be 12 inches of gravel, 6 inches of crushed, and then the 4 inches of pavement. One of the reasons that we're avoiding, or one of the reasons that the full depth reconstruction is expensive is the information that we identified during the downtown drainage project that requires us to dispose of at a landfill any material we move out.
Right.
So that's why reclaim became an option to look at very quickly, because we don't generate any excess material.
I think they went down pretty, deep on the last time they did the road, so I don't think we'll have to worry about materials, but even still, if we could just probably do like a top grind, putting it down, be done with it would be best, I think, but.
How does it affect the longevity of the road?
Each of those options have, progressively less shelf life. So you've got full depth reconstruction, you probably get 20 years out of your road, you might have to crack seal in 10. If we reclaim, you might be in the same boat, pretty close, depending on the materials that are there. If we mill and overlay, the cracks you see there now are probably gonna show back up within 5 years. And you'll have to crack seal, and if you crack seal and do a maintenance program, you're probably okay for another 5 years after that. You're probably looking at replacement after 10. There's another option that I threw out right away, which was to just saw cut the existing road and build sidewalks. But what that would create is a line all the way up your road where water can get in and probably do more damage to your roadway surface. So that's why we went to the mill and overlay, because we can construct the sidewalks, but then give you a full surface to make sure that you don't have that line where water can enter your roadway gravels.
Right.
So a reclaim gives you the same longevity at a cheaper cost?
If the materials below the asphalt are good, which by our accounts with Joe, the gravels are good.
Okay.
What you do is you grind up the asphalt and mix it in with the top layer of gravel. So you don't touch really the bottom layer of gravel, and you make the top layer stronger by putting in more aggregate. It's all asphalt, but you put in more aggregate. So it gives you a pretty strong top layer. Some of the issues with this, which you may not have because you've got closed drainage, is if groundwater comes up and gets into that reclaim material, sometimes it doesn't exit the reclaim material that well, and you get some heaving and cracking. But it's a solid solution, especially if you're just looking to rebuild a road at a relatively inexpensive way.
In the scheme of things, yes.
Yeah, when you're looking at it compared to full depth reconstruction.
I mean, I kind of like that option. Since we redid that so recently, we're not dealing with a situation it's not like South Main Street where we had really no idea what we were looking at underneath that roadway. This section of road,
We kind of know.
we kind of know.
And
So we just put it there.
That's why I think the mill and overlay option is good, because you're basically grinding the top layer of pavement independent of what the thickness is and putting another layer on top of it. So you'll end up gaining some of that thickness.
Yeah.
It will crack where it's cracked now because you're not solving anything below the surface. And if some of that is because of thin pavement, then maybe we're in a maybe we resolve that a little bit, make it a little bit better. The reclaim option where you grind everything in, that was still $2+ million to do that. The mill and overlay is the closest to getting you the roadway and a roundabout, I guess, at 2.4. Another $1 million above what you have right now.
And where was water and sewer gonna go? Or we don't know.
Sidewalk.
Is there a hybrid option where you could?
Sidewalk down the hill?
All right. And not
Currently
in the
there.
road.
No.
Okay.
Yeah, yes, there's sort of a hybrid option, but you start getting extra costs because with a milling machine, you just run right up the road, you mill it, and then you come up and pave it. If you mill it, then rip it up, fix a section, you don't gain the efficiencies of carrying the process,
And then you might also get uneven settling
And you get differential materials too, so if you end up pulling out a bunch of road and putting in gravels, but we reclaim on either side of it or don't change anything, then you'll have X amount of material here, and then you'll have a different material here, then another one there, and they will all behave differently. You want, independent of what the material is, you want it to be consistent along the road so the road behaves consistently.
so you don't get places that do this.
That's where you'll find, like at culvert crossings, you know, a lot of time you'll pull up the culvert, you'll put in stone, really nice gravel, then build back up, and then like on Warren Street, you've got silt on either side of it. And what you're gonna find is you got a really nice road over the culvert, and you've got the rest of Warren Street around it, and then you get, Warren Street comes up and the culvert stays where it is, or the culvert comes up, and so those are the things, you wanna make sure that you get a very consistent behavior of the roadway.
Makes sense.
So is there a second option for the old Ward Bridge Road and Reservoir Road?
You can make a new Ward Bridge Road, go right to the highway.
Right to the highway,
Yep.
yeah. But out of the three options that were discussed tonight, we had the roundabout, the realignment, or the reconfiguration.
Yes, what's your question? Your question is
Which
there,
is your second option,
Oh.
if,
of
those three?
it's
I would say that
the
the,
$30,000 difference between 1 and 2 doesn't even seem like it's
Makes
worth
it-
discussing
Yeah.
as a,
so the other one, the only
Differential.
other one would be to keep it the same.
would only be if half of this
that would be
board, if the board
reconfigured.
was split on the idea of a roundabout, right? Like if Mary Ann and Bill were like roundabouts are terrible and Ted and I were like, we love roundabouts, then maybe we would consider option 2, but I don't,
Oh, Neil hasn't weighed in yet.
Neil hasn't weighed in, but
He's got big trucks.
I wouldn't, yeah, it'd be interesting to hear what he has to say, but I've heard him speak positively
Yeah.
about them in the past.
He's argued for a roundabout down at
Right,
Smith Bridge.
Smith.
He has,
Right.
yeah. And I think that Josh's point about this community is familiar with roundabouts. We've got one right on Main Street, and everybody navigates that all the time.
I just don't see, considering option 2, $30,000 different, a viable thing to consider.
No,
Not to be able to control traffic as a roundabout will.
right?
Right.
And that the calming effect that you have from everybody coming, they got to slow down for it, and then honestly, a traffic light. Sometimes people speed through a traffic light, to get that yellow. We did have the gentleman bring up traffic lights. I find that sometimes they can cause the opposite effect.
Well, it also wouldn't solve the large bus problem, right? I mean, the roundabout is the only solution.
It gives us a better
Right, that
sweep.
better
Well,
turn.
maybe we could solve the bus. You'd still have to spend $970,000 to realign the intersection before you put the traffic light in. That realigned intersection allows for bus movements, but then you would end up tacking on the traffic lights and create an intersection that is less efficient than a roundabout that is basically the same price before the traffic lights. And it should note that our roundabout cost includes lighting it. So at night, there would be lights there.
Would we still have that flashing yellow light over it, or boy, that would
Oh,
improve just from a purely personal
been there for
standpoint.
so long.
Can we leave it there?
That would improve my life because
Every
that
so
light
often it
flashes-
falls down, too.
That lights my bedroom every.
We could put that over our driveway.
Yeah,
There you go.
yeah. Thanks, Steve. You're helpful.
As long as it's pointed down your driveway, it's fine.
And what would happen if we just did the rotary and not the rest of Island?
We wouldn't have sidewalks
Yeah.
good sidewalks all the way down,
Okay.
which is the other complexity. Like, you're gonna solve a
Yes.
problem but leave another one out there. Either way, you're solving one of the problems. You know, there was a lot of conversation about safe pedestrian movement. Then there was a lot of conversation, probably an equal amount of conversation about vehicle speeds and the intersection. So now you have, in my opinion, there were equal concerns along this roadway. People being able to safely move around and feel like they can walk on the sidewalk safely and get to and from the intersection and the other parts of town safely, which they can't do, and then the conversations about the intersection. So the project intent from the beginning was to resolve both problems. And that's the way we've kind of approached this, but the funding is the
Right, that's
the key that's not quite there yet.
That's what I was wondering, if the funding came down to, we can only do one.
I think there's another option. You know,
Okay.
like I said, you could saw cut the edge of the roadway and build a sidewalk. I think it's gonna impact the longevity of your existing road, which is why I didn't recommend it. You're just gonna introduce water. Water's gonna be running down the curb line of where the curb's gonna be, which is right where your saw cut's gonna be. So you're just gonna be promoting water to enter your roadway, which is why you need to do the overlay across the road so you don't have
That cut.
that, or at least you'd have to go hand pavement out maybe 3 feet so you overlap over the saw cut to construct the curbing. But there's an option there that's not superb.
I think we gotta see if there's additional funding available. and-
Absolutely.
And also, speaking of that, is there a way to utilize any kind of like help we can to go to bat for us? I'm not saying like a rep, but like an executive counselor or something like that. We get like our executive counselor to go to bat for us, or how would you approach it with like DOT as far as like getting the best
I think,
option?
well, there's other, Scott, do you know the timing of congressionally directed spending and when each of our representatives, our congresspeople and senators ask for projects?
Yeah, we have been in conversation with Annie Custer's office with regards to funding, and she said that, at least the representative that met with us, said the funding has been cut drastically.
Let's do that. That's one way that we've worked projects like this, is to kind of identify the CDS, try to find some CDS funding. I think we'd have the conversation with our project manager from DOT, see how complicated the process is. If it starts to feel like we need support, then maybe we reach out to local representation to kind of have a conversation with DOT's front office at that point and see if we can get a little bit.
And we do have some contacts there that, once we find out if the conversation is an open conversation and we can have it, we move forward, but also including some of our representation as well.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you.
really appreciate it.
Thank you, Josh.
This was really valuable for when we get to the point where we have to make decisions, to hear what everyone had to say, and be able to say, like, when Ann, Scott, and I meet, we can, and after we know what the conversation is, we can say, this is really the direction that everybody wants to go. So,
Yeah,
And what about Lakes Region Planning Commission too? I mean, they would go to bat for us theoretically for a TAC, project, but I don't know if they know anybody or they have any influence, or, I don't know. But I'd probably keep that in the back of our minds too, with a new executive director, come April.
we're their transportation engineer too. So,
There you go.
thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Right.
All right, so let's go backwards to Denron Hall HVAC.
So this is a project that we put out to bid back in October, November, and we received 2 bids, one from Denron Hall and the other from Blown Service. And we knew that those bids were much higher than the money that we had available to address the inefficiencies and inadequacies in the system here in Town Hall. So I reached back out to both vendors to ask if they would be willing to put together a priority list of what would fit in our budget and what we could do. Only Denron Hall was willing to do that. The other vendor wasn't willing to reevaluate their quote and submit another proposal to us. So based on that, Denron Hall came back. They came up, met with us again, went through the entire system again, and said, really, where your inefficiencies are in your air conditioning unit outside the building, which we spent, I think, $6,000 on last year, and it's going to need much more work this year. So they talked about the chiller unit, the air handling units in the basement, as well as the power wiring, control wiring. There's obviously the mechanical labor, mechanical materials, and then putting baseboard downstairs to keep this area warm. Today, we had people wearing coats because we just couldn't get heat into this the town office area. So their price came back, leaving the boilers. They did a full evaluation of the 2 boilers in the basement and said they have some extended life left to them as long as they're maintained properly. And they came back with a quote of $126,606 to do all the work that was in the email that I sent to you and outlining the breakdown of the cost, as well as doing all new thermostats and control panels in the basement to control the unit, so not everybody's punching and touching the thermostats. As I said in the email, the funds would come from the 2021 ARPA funds designated for Town Hall HVAC, which there's $158,310. He said, doing this work right here, it probably would get us through another 10 to 15 years.
Sounds great.
Yeah.
That's where we are.
Yeah, no, I think it sounds great.
Yeah.
And their hope is that if this was approved, they would be able to start work within 3 weeks on the system.
Nice,
How
and they're
long
gonna-
will it take them?
What's that?
How long will it take them to do the work?
They said
roughly?
anywhere from 3 weeks to a month. The major portion is removing the equipment.
Yeah.
And then the unknown is ordering the unit that sits outside. Hopefully, they get it ordered soon enough so it's here within 3 to 4 weeks.
Like anything.
Right.
Supply
Yeah,
and
hope it
demand.
doesn't take like a year to 3 or something like that, so.
Yeah, it could be worse. And they don't have to take the heating system offline to do any of that work, so that's great.
And they'll add a zone for that baseboard heat. That will be the forced hot water heat on the outside wall downstairs here.
Yep. Good.
Okay. I'll make a motion to approve the $126,606 for the Town Hall HVAC project.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Should we give it to Mary Ann first? All right. We have another new business. Review and approve reallocation of funds within the 23-24 budget to adequately and appropriately fund the new position of facilities manager. Ann.
Okay, so when we put the budget last year together for the current year that we're in, we anticipated that the new facilities manager position would be filled as a replacement for the recycling center manager. However, we have now, and he has accepted the position of facilities manager. So in order to appropriately budget for this position, I'm asking for a reallocation, specific budget lines, and I think you all have that list. Where we're getting the money for. It's a total for the remainder of this year, well, since the employee has come back through June 30th, about $48,094 is what we're asking to be reallocated from recycling and cemetery and there'll be brand-new lines put in the general government facilities budget, because we didn't have any people in there before, so I need to put some money in there for that. And we'll wait to make sure, but once the budget for 24-25 passes, we'll come back to the board and say, we'd like to move this money to these these lines as well. I didn't ask you to move anything yet, because our budgets are set, as they are, so.
Yep.
So I do have a motion on there that could be read to reallocate budget line items, I believe on my handout.
Yep, in bold.
Yes, please.
Okay. I'll make a motion to reallocate budget line items currently budgeted in the 23-24 budget within the recycling center and cemetery budgets to new budget lines being created for the position of facilities manager. These new lines to be located within the general government buildings budget. Total allocation for the position from the recycling center and cemetery budgets to the general government buildings budget will be $48,094.
Second.
Any discussion?
As you said, it doesn't get any easier than that, huh?
No, make it nice and easy. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I have a few items left here to be signed. We have a land use change tax for 69 Crescent Street. The amount of the land use change tax on this is $6,500. Looking for signatures on that. And I'm sorry, the sticker must have come off, or she did not. Right?
Where does it go?
She should have had your name on there somewhere.
Oh, down there at the bottom. Okay, I can see it. I see it.
Okay. Next item I have is an elderly exemption. The individual applied and then decided that they would withdraw their application, no longer interested. It's their choice.
All right.
So there's that. This is a notice of timber intent to cut. Neil's not here, so that's good. This property is on Loon Lake Road. Notice of intent to excavate for Ambrose's property on Route 3. That's good to go. I have a in-house abatement for Walmart. When we reached their settlement with Walmart, the new assessment for 2023 did not go as far as it should have been down, so it's an $1,800 value. $43.88 is the amount that you're abating for that one. And then I have two additional abatements. Both have recommendations from the assessors to deny. No supporting documentation regarding their opinion of value on either property. And that's all I have.
Where did that come from?
There's like a cover sheet on one of them.
Or Walmart specified.
Oh, that's okay. It can just go in the pile and we'll figure it out.
All right.
One Walmart in there, so.
Sign that last one.
Oh, did I not? I didn't give you the last one, did I? I decided you weren't going to sign it.
Just skip right over you,
Need
huh?
me.
Send those all back to Ann. All right, committee reports. Mary Ann?
I have none.
None.
All around, none.
Neil's not here. Scott, did you attend the most recent planning board?
I did.
Wanna give us an
So there
update?
was 2 items on the meeting for February 15th. One of them was North Country Development, Tenny Mountain. Stephen Kelly came in asking for extensions for his substantial development as well as the conditions. He was given 1 year on the conditions and 2 years on substantial development. So the conditions will expire 3 of 25, and substantial development will expire 3 of 26. The only other thing on the agenda that night was an accessory dwelling unit on Fairgrounds Road, and that was approved without any issues. Those were the 2 things that were discussed.
All right. Campus Community Council,
We have tentatively scheduled a meeting for April 10th at 5:15 here.
school.
No, we haven't
Hasn't
met
been
since
anything
our
since the
last.
last time we met, yeah. Conservation?
I was unable to attend the Conservation Commission meeting due to it coinciding with candidates night.
Oh, right. How did candidates night go? I was out of town.
Yeah, I missed it too. And is it broadcast?
It's online.
Okay, I was looking for it, I couldn't find it.
Yeah. It went well. There was 100 plus. I think Kathy, Kelsey gave an update. There was over 100 people attending through Zoom connection.
Wow.
There was obviously some on PBTV, and we had about 20 in the room.
That's good.
And we had the Plymouth Elementary School Board candidates were in attendance. And 2 of the 3 candidates for the Select Board were in attendance as well. Mike Conklin was the facilitator, asked the questions,
Does a
got
good
the
job.
responses. It lasted just about an hour
Yeah, just about.
or so.
Good. I love that we do those.
Yep.
Yeah, and a big shout out to Kathy, Kelsey,
Kathy, Mike Conklin, and Val
Mike
Scarborough.
Conklin, Val Scarborough. Highly appreciate the work that all 3 of them do to pull that together. It's part of it being from the community means there's less, worry about any of us influencing it or anything. So it's really appreciated that they all do that work. LRPC bill.
Nothing.
Parks and Rec.
I do have notes from the meeting. It was also on the same night as.
Busy night.
Yeah. So I'll go over the brief topics. They discussed the ban and their potential use in the future. They basically agreed that they would forego it this time and revisit it next year. Let's see. They talked about remote and flex time arrangements for the staff, but basically Lisa and Kelsey and a few others, they wind up putting in a lot of time at certain times of the month and less others, so that it was more of a discussion about not being 8 to 5 kind of deal, and that, they'll do a little more here and take it off over here. And everybody seemed generally okay with that. Signage management, Robert will continue to manage signage around the downtown island. They did talk about Calvary Christian School, that they would not be currently using that gym, but would be still interested in potential options in the future. Clubs, they're basically record-breaking numbers. They talked about, making sure that they are equally serving the very young and the adult population, creating more balance there per what was discussed in the past. They talked about February vacation programs. There were a multitude of them. I don't remember the specifics, but they have a lot of things. They're not full day. They're generally a couple of excursions, couple that are hosted on site. The budget is right on track with what they expected. They talked about their T-ball program. Basically, they've revamped it to not compete with offerings that others are. So they've gone to a slightly younger group. I think this was under 5, and so that everybody was pretty supportive of that. They are currently working on summer programs, and they specifically called out transportation prices, costs as a factor that they need to pass along, and trying to limit school access during the school construction projects. That is it.
Lots of good stuff. Any questions for Ted? All right. Parking Committee? You didn't have it. You said no updates tonight.
No, next meeting is March 19th.
Okay. Energy Commission?
I heard most of what's going on, but they also were putting out a questionnaire that's going to be available.
When's that going out?
It's going to be at the.
It's going to be like a
at
physical
both the
thing.
elections and a town meeting. QR code, and
So we'll see it in 2 weeks.
we've already gone through a first draft of it. So
Great.
Yep.
Advisory Budget Committee's at rest. Chamber of Commerce?
No chamber.
No chamber. PERLAC?
meeting tomorrow night.
Tomorrow. And still nothing from Police and Fire.
Still waiting.
All right. That concludes everything I'm aware of on the agenda.
I think Dan is the only public person.
Yeah, any public comment from Zoom?
No, everything's good.
All right. We appreciate you, Dan. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan.
No problem.
We have no non-public.
No non-public.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Did